Story 1. Beautiful. There are milestones in your life that you never forget, and renting your first apartment is one of them. What can I say about mine? It was quaint, cheap, and had enough space that I could fit a bed if I really cram the mattress against the wall. It wasn't the glorious, romantic idea of moving out, but I could afford it. And that's what really mattered. I remembered taking the rusted key from my broad-shouldered, heavy-bearded landlord, and oddly enough, I couldn't keep the sting of cold electricity from running up my spine. I'm not superstitious, but I'd be a liar if I said that it didn't frighten me. I should have left there, just let it go and walked away. But I didn't. It's a nice room. I really can't understand why no one would want to rent it, he answered, a frown of confusion lining his features. I remember giving a shrug, thanking him politely, and scooting my way out the door. Making my way up the stairs, I glanced between the cracks of each step to see the pebbled sidewalk below. Several of the boards were wound tight with duct tape, holding them together. Even the slightest bit of weight caused them bend precariously, giving an aching squeak. It would have been so easy to break them, but luckily I didn't. I opened the door. It was solid wood with a faded brass mailbox. The one thing that caught my eye was a post-it stuck right at my eye level to welcome me to the building. Apparently, there was one other person living in the building below though my landlord never remembered seeing them. Welcome. I hope you find the apartment to your liking. Your neighbor downstairs. Taking the small piece of paper, I stuffed it in my pocket before reaching for my key. Finally, it seemed like I found someone who didn't creep me out, though the good feelings didn't last long. As I slid the key into the lock, the brown rust specked off onto my hand, and I sneered in disgust. Pulling back to brush it off, with a forced crack of old wood, I saw the inside. Yellow tiles lined the floor, and a white, cracked ceiling was above me. It had a bedroom, a bathroom the size of a broom closet, a living area with a window that only showed the bricks of the building next door, and a filthy kitchen, complete with overflowing ant traps. Giving a sigh, I could only stuff my hands into my pockets, crinkling the post-it before setting down my bag. The apartment had already been paid for, and I couldn't back out then, or rather I refused to, being the stubborn pain in the neck I grew up to be. I stayed there for several months, and after a cleaning storm and some furnishings, it began to look like a home during the day, that is. At night, my apartment was always a different story. I'd lie in my bed, pull my covers up to my chin, and get the most anxious chills. My hands would shake, and my stomach held the warning pressure of an exploding bladder, but that was never the case. Sometimes I'd be paralyzed with fear, never understanding why. In the darkness, all I could see was the white lights of my digital clock and the single red eye of the smoke detector perched on the ceiling. I tried to think nothing of it, but the feeling only began to get worse one night as I lay in bed, with insomnia's cloudiness filling my head. I heard noises from beneath my bed. I was used to it, often hearing music or the sound of clicking, as my downstairs neighbor used his computer. At every hour of the day, I knew the sound of typing keys, and sometimes I'd see the blue glow coming from his window. When I came back late at night, however, that night something about it made me nauseous. I listened to it, squirming with an antsy disgust. I couldn't take it anymore. I threw my legs over the side of the bed and stood up. I had to stop that clicking. It was driving me crazy, and all I wanted to do was sleep. I couldn't remember a time when I had been that angry, but lack of sleep tends to do that to people. I made my way down the stairs, each one giving the horrid grinding sound of duct tape rubbing against itself. But I didn't care. I was tired, angry, and I'd stop that clicking, no matter what it took. With each step I felt my heart pounding, but the antsy feeling began to consume me. I didn't know if I was going to vomit or pass out, but I refused to do either until that clicking was gone. Going to the door of my neighbor, I was inches from the door handle when I heard the sound of breaking glass and a scream of pain. Through my hazy mind, I threw the door open and made my way into the apartment. It was dark, and I could barely see anything, though the notes of a song I couldn't name reached my ears. I saw the familiar blue glow coming from one of the rooms, and I followed it like a moth to a flame. What I found has burned itself into my mind, and I'll never forget it. On a wall wasn't just a small laptop, but several monstrous monitors that spread across it. There were 9 of them, all lined up to surround a single, decrepit swivel chair placed by a desk with a keyboard. I reached over, my mind forgetting any weariness it was suffering before. As I touched one of the keys, I recalled, quickly finding it newly sticky, and I felt my stomach pushing towards further nausea. But within seconds, the monitors lit up bright, leaving me temporarily blinded, and blinking back spots. Once my sight returned to me, I stared at the monitors as one by one they loaded to show different places in my apartment. Bedroom, living room, bathroom, kitchen, front door, they were all there, and I began shaking, looking around for any sign of the neighbor I've never met. Everything was dead, and I felt around blindly for a light switch, only to find that there was none. The computers seemed to be their only source of light, and I tore my eyes away from them as soon as I could manage it. Granted, the clicking had stopped, but the music continued to play, coming from the bedroom. The same song looped itself over and over. Each time the guitar began with its cheerful chords frightened me further. I ran as fast as I could towards the door, nearly tripping over pizza boxes and carelessly discarded books. All I knew was that I had to get away from it. The blinding monitors, the overwhelming stench of mold, the sticky keyboard, everything that happened for the rest of that night happened in a blur of panic. I packed my bags and left as soon as I could. Apparently, they never found the creep. He escaped before I could get into his apartment. The only trace of him was that broken basement window and blood-soaked shards of glass. My stomach turns just thinking about it. Now, to be honest, one thing I do remember from my experience happened as I went to leave the apartment, and my creepy neighbor for good. I had my bags thrown over my shoulder, weighing me down to exhaustion, when I saw a small square stuck to the inside of my door, staring me in the face, just daring me to leave. Written in maniac scrawl were song lyrics that still keep me from listening to the radio. I'll never forget it. The song that had been looping in the monster's bedroom that night gave me one more challenge before I opened the door, never to look back. If only you saw what I can see, you'll understand why I want you so desperate. Healy, right now I'm looking at you and I can't believe. You don't know you're beautiful. That's what makes you beautiful. Story 2. The sentence kneels by the edge. He of the cliff sat the man without wills. I approached him reluctantly while the mountains were asleep. He turned his head to face me, and his expression was blank. "Have you come to ask me your one question?" asked the man. "Yes," I reply. "It is known that in the universe exists the man without wills. Every living being gets to ask the man one question, and word is that every answer he's ever given has satisfied every inquisitor. Many a curious soul have come to ask him about his nature. Many return with proclamations that the man is no mortal. Perhaps it was in a dream that I had been urged to go and find this man. In that dream I saw the mountains, yet here I am now, fully awake and unsure whether what I'm feeling would be terror or curiosity. There is no mistaking that this is him, and there's no turning back now. Little did I know what my curiosity would bring me. Go on, approach. There's no turning back now, said the man. I took one careful step. Was that not an assertion? I wondered. I thought to myself, I felt every fiber of my flesh trembling. Was it from horror? I was not sure. To be before his presence was a feeling I could not word. His voice I led away into the void. What followed was what I had feared the most. I smelled it in the air and felt it in my marrow. The mountains shook and turned to dust, and the ground beneath my feet dissolved into nothingness. For sure, this was no longer a dream. The air grew dark and colder. Sullen howls were flooding the atmosphere, and below me, below the man, was pure unending dark. It seemed that we were no longer within the same realm we had inhabited just a few seconds ago. I kept my wits about. Am I going to die? I thought. I did not ask him that. I was being very careful not to waste my one question, despite how much I wanted to ask why the earth had transmogrified. Where are we? I thought and again resisted the urge to ask it. I kept my wits about by recalling the past. I remember meeting those who've met the man without wills, and how they were never the same person they were before they got to ask their one question. They were rarely ever confused again or troubled again after their encounter with the man, but neither were they again gleeful. A sort of vacuum had replaced what once seemed the soul in their eyes. I was unsure whether theirs was the low okay of longing or the look of contentment. Trapped inside their eyes might have been screams asking for help, screams that longed to undo the hell that is to have one's question ultimatum. Why answered and thus snuffed becomes the possibility of further inquiry. But trapped inside their eyes might be the most tranquil river calmer and 1,000 slumbers, and this river may have been carved in to being by the man now before myself, him of no mortal stature. I was unsure of what would happen to me after my one chance. I made sure not to ask him that, despite how much I caught me close to doing so. My jaw almost gave in, almost let out the curious air, but I drew it back and swallowed. My resolve was fixed on asking him only one thing. Perhaps it was in a dream that I saw the man beg me to extinguish him, that he only could nullify lives for so long, and that the task, once enjoyable, has now become a burden. Perhaps he longed to die. I took another step closer to the man. There was no earth beneath us. There was only void made material. The look on his face was blank. His eyes were hollow yet tranquil. Or were they? For a second I thought his eyes were full of anguish. But I made sure not to ask him that. He reached out slowly with a hand in the dark, wanting to pull me in. When I felt his hand, it was nothing close to resembling skin and muscle. The heavens had been replaced by pulsating darkness. It made one want to look away immediately. The man reached his fingers to my eyes. "What is taking you so long, Wood? You want me to ask your question for you?" asked the man. I was terrified by his tone of impatience. "No, I do not," said I. "Then what is it you seek?" My head grew heavy. 1,000 lightning bolts perforated the blanket-like atmosphere. He knew I came here to destroy him. I felt my question well up from deep within my soul. This was the moment I've waited for so long. Perhaps the universe cheered for me in secret. I felt the question climb slowly out of my entrails and depart through my teeth. The question contorted itself into sound, but surely this was to fail as representative. But it didn't, so it seemed. I wish it hadn't. I asked, "Why are you so cold?" At last I had purged myself of the question. There was nothing to do now but wait. My constitution has been turned inside out. One could look at me and see no hints of anything. A lengthy pause followed. Perhaps the man misunderstood, but no, I was certain that he never misunderstood. If it is true that he transcends us ordinary beings, then would it also not be true that he transcends our stupidity? But where we are now, and how he brought us here, perhaps only reinforces his being of another form, of another kind, stuttering. I tried to follow my question with, "Man is never separate from his will." That would be impossible. Ah, alas, the question. They've long prophesied the question I've stirred within you. They've put everything into plan. And now we are here at the end of the world, at the edge of time and consciousness. Your preconceptions, they are true. I am not man. I am something else, neither below it nor above. Your question begins to seize my hands as I had wanted it to. The erasure must see that itself is finished. I am wit. How it will end I am without desire. I am the vertebra of the cosmos, but never did I seek this position. I had birthed the earth, and so did it birth me. But time has come to erase all mortality and the fabric altogether. Must I thank you? I suppose I must, but I have no will. But don't you see? I am pulled by forces sentience will never understand nor encounter. Perhaps in another life and in another dimension will there be an understanding amongst all entities. Feel no need to apologize to the others who came before you. Time is ripe, the long-awaited undoing is. I stood in silence, amazed and puzzled. Perhaps I was mostly terrified. Slowly, what felt like 1,000 years, the man lifted his arms high and tilted his head to face me. I could not bear to gaze, but I was gripped by something immaterial. I knew terror. His eyes were hollow when we got here, and now they're even emptier. So empty that my own eyes start a T. Oh, turn in their sockets, dear inquisitor. You are to lock eyes with God. The man's voice thundered. In fact, it was not voice at all. It was pure form. As his final words echoed through the infinite sea of black, so did his material vessel dissolve into a deep pool in space. 1,000,000 blades of light cut through the nothingness. Out spewed all the horrors of existence. From nothingness he reformed, and now he appears before me 1,000-fold larger. I was the dust by his feet. I am unworthy of proximity. No matter how hard I try and look up to see his face, I fail. The figure was too tremendous. Mine eyes cannot reach. I look up only to know. A veil, I see no expression. A sea of light has drowned the midriff. Miles away were two spheres ablaze. I had never asked to stare at God. I was compelled. I had to lock eyes with God, but I could not discern whether the look in God's eyes were merciful or sinister. Story 3. Deprivation. The first to go was my sight. On thinking of T.H. he experiment in my mind, I was hoping that my sight would be one of the last senses to switch off. I wasn't sure if the drug shut them off in an order, or if it was more of a random cycle. It would only be temporary, but I prepared for an uncomfortable but potentially interesting experience. I had been fascinated with sensory deprivation for a long period of my life, but a chlorinated pool wouldn't satisfy me. I wanted something that would truly degrade my senses. I had acquired an experimental sedative, one that was used for a complete paralysis of sensation. I wasn't a big-name scientific researcher, but I was curious, perhaps to an extreme degree. My sight didn't immediately die, but faded out. It appeared as if I was slowly shutting my eyes, still being able to feel myself blink, until all I could sense was darkness. Though I expected the thoughts, I began to sympathize to how blind man would feel with that sort of limitation. It could be different for one who was born with the condition, but feeling my eyelids move across my lifeless eyes was rather haunting. I almost wished my sense of touch would go next. My mind didn't have any images to process, so I began to process my own. I would describe it similar to how, if one closes their eyes, they see faint, but recognizable shades of color, perhaps resembling what was in vision beforehand. With my vision gone completely, the faint colors made their own shapes, sometimes appearing to be silhouettes of people. I talked to myself to help keep these controlled as they began to make me feel invaded. The next to go was my hearing, in which my self-conversation became completely useless. I first thought that my speech was growing weaker, but I realized that the volume of all sounds was fading just as quick as my vision. When it had left me, I heard only a single sound, or at least only thought of one. There's a familiar, god-awful ringing that man have claimed to hear on a regular basis, sometimes for short periods, others for as much as days. This can be an actual ear condition, but given how my hearing had diminished, I was sure that it was being produced. My own thoughts, the ringing intensified and began to sound inconsistent. At random, short intervals, the ring would change into what I would think to be a loud microphone screech. Then I assumed that the next to go was my taste, though since I hadn't recently consumed any food or liquid, I felt little change. I did lose a feeling inside my mouth, but this was being drowned out by the illusions being presented by my loss of sound and sight. More figures appeared in the blackness in my vision, and they then appeared to move. Their steps were jagged, and their ligaments contorted, staggering as if they were an abstract painting in motion. The ringing in my ear continued to grow more acute, more concentrated at intervals. The noises in my head were nearly in sync with the movements of the colored shadows, being the most evident when they were closer. As my senses began to feel more hijacked than depraved, I recognized that my sense of smell was aiding, though, like my sense of taste, this passed by me nearly unnoticed. I was far too distracted with what my mind was creating. There was only a single figure left, centered in the darkness. It stepped forward slowly, with the ringing now blaring through my head. My hearing didn't feel gone anymore, but blocked out by the constant noise I began thrashing at. My surroundings, shouting for help that I wouldn't even be able to witness. The shadow was tall, with some limbs wider than the rest of its body. Its legs still waved when it walked, twisting as I began to make out what I thought were its eyes. The last sense to go was my touch, and this had proved to be the worst to suffer. As I could feel my body growing invisible, I flailed frantically, knocking into objects. I threw myself to the ground and began to scrape my body with my nails and teeth, desperate to bring a sense to my mind. After what felt like only a few seconds, with every one of my senses shut down, the ringing in my head ceased and turned to soft, unrecognizable whispers. These, like the ringing, grew louder as the figure continued to approach. I could only watch as it came closer, and just as it appeared to only be a few feet in front of me, I saw its face, I saw its eyes. They were black lenses, flashing with dim colors and swirling in a dark vortex. They locked on to me, and as I looked into them, the surrounding darkness became more like the eyes themselves, a chaotic, sickening void, with no calm in its storm. The whispering had passed, and had changed into a violent screech. It was comparable to a low-quality, distorted microphone scream blasted on the highest volume. In the midst of this mental suffering, which I was praying would end at any moment, I had the foolish, insane idea of speaking to the nightmare. I asked what it was and what it wanted. I had merely thought of the words and its screeching seas head, only to begin speaking in the whisper it had made. Before this time I could understand every word. I am what remains when everything else has vanished. I am what is left watching you as you are distracted, made blind by everything else you sense and experience. I'm what you sometimes witness for a split second, only to pass off as your imagination. I wait patiently, eager for the moment, where your soul is left exposed without a shell to protect you. The whispers made me convinced that my hearing had returned, that somebody, in reality, was whispering right into both my ear. As I continued to look into the being's tormenting eyes, it began to reach its jagged, deformed hand near my face, as if to grasp it. As I felt my spirit and sanity began to collapse, the shadow began to dissipate and fall back into the void that was now becoming brighter. The whispers and screeches fell back quickly, like my body was waking up from a violent dream. My senses quickly came back all at once. My energy had been massively drained, like I had just run in circles for hours. I was only lying down on my living room floor, with the objects and furniture in shambles. Wrecked from a struggle, my body was covered in bruises and scratches, covered in a thick layer of sweat as I panted from what had just gone through my head. My ordeal was over, as the pill was only temporary. I looked at the clock, trying to remember when I had started the experiment. The entire event had only lasted for minutes, as the researchers had originally promised. I spent the next hour trying to recollect myself, disturbed by what had taken place. Although I seemed safe, I still felt a feeling of dread as I tried to remember everything I experienced. I tried to pass the Experian, see as a fabrication of my own mind that losing all my senses had caused my feeling of paranoia and fear to materialize into a vivid terror that would only vanish when my senses recover. Read. What I can't forget, however, were those words, its words. The distorted being had vanished, but was it because my senses now blocked it out of my mind? I only wished that I had never been too daring to ask the question I had. Had I only kept silent, I would have passed this event off as my own intensified imagination. Another horror only created, then destroy be. Why my head, I want to be able to think that, but I can't, because every time it comes to my mind, I can only think of it right in front of my face, invisible, waiting for when my body is dead, and my mind is a target of havoc. As always, I see the faint colors when I close my eyes, sometimes shaping themselves in a familiar, distorted figure. Story 4. Brown Spots. May 25th, 2017. I think there is something growing in my bathroom. I live in what can best be described as a townhouse with my parents, brother, and cat. My room's on the second floor, as is my brother's, and we have a small bathroom, along with an office, on the same floor. Recently, I've started noticing little brown spakes on my shower walls. Considering that I have my back facing the wall where the spakes mostly appear, I assumed it was my hair conditioner, which is also brown. But at the same time, the spakes on the wall are darker than my conditioner. Mold or fungus, maybe. Maybe it's just my brother being a dick and trying to prank me. It wouldn't be the first time. May 27th, 2017. Okay, so the spakes are still showing up in the shower stall, even though I clean the hell out of those walls whenever I see them. I don't know why, but if I'm in the bathroom and see something dirty like the sink or shower, I absolutely have to clean it then and there, probably because I'll forget until the next time I walk in there. Nothing that some wipes and bleach can't fix, right? If this is a prank by my brother, I'll give him kudos. Usually, he doesn't have the patience to make these kind of things last for more than a day. June 9th, 2017. I'm starting to think this isn't just limited to my bathroom now. I went downstairs to take to Ben Adderall pills because I have a horrible case of insomnia and can't sleep. Without them, NyQuil won't even do the trick. Anyway, while I have that and a teacup of water in hand, I flick the light on and notice the little brown spakes on the wall next to the switch. Needless to say, I didn't fancy seeing that and cleaned the little turds away. I'm getting sick of seeing these brown spakes, and I am going to get on my brother's case about it. June 10th, 2017. My brother's not the one who's making this happen. He might be a goofball, but he's one of the most honest people I know. I pestered him about these brown dots, and he told me that he thought I was the one making them. He even started getting a little annoyed by my accusations towards him and shut the door in my face. The dots aren't and that big, but they're annoying as hell. June 12th, 2017. My cat won't even go near the bathroom anymore. She used to love drinking out of the sink. It was a tough habit to break because she's spoiled rotten, but there were more times than I can count where she would just sit on the left side of the sink and would drink out of it while I was in the shower. Weird, I know, but I go. She liked being near me so to make sure I wouldn't slip or something. Now she avoids the bathroom as if it was me getting asked by my boss to stay late at work. If I try to coax her into the bathroom, she either bolt into my room or her fur will stand up. I've listened to enough of these stories to know that's a bad sign, especially since she loves drinking from other faucets. June 13th, 2017. Bugs. It's bugs. Thousands of them. I don't know what kind, but they're ugly as sin and won't stop coming. I can't find where they're originating from, but for someone with a terrible case of entomophobia, this is keeping me awake at all hours. I wanted to nap so badly today, but I know I saw a stink bug crawling along the floor. Anything that's small with more than 4 legs will send me into a panic because of a traumatic reason from my past. You'll probably laugh, but when I was in the 2nd grade, I believe it was, the kids in the grade above me one day decided to wait until our daycare class was outside to hold a daddy long leg in front of my face. The way it wriggled and moved its legs was enough to give me a horrible panic attack, especially with how close it was to me. I was sitting next to the teacher's aide when this happened, so I very vividly remember clinging to her arm and crying my little heart out. She scolded the kids and took a good 10 minutes tea. Oh, calm me down. So seeing these bugs everywhere and not knowing where they're coming from is a huge problem for me. June 15th, 2017. They're not just in the bathroom, they're in the kitchen. My cat hunts bugs, but even she won't touch these fuckers. It's getting to the point where I firmly believe hairspray and a torch of some kind will solve the problem. My parents are just as concerned and upset as I am, as Mom hates creepy crawlies. June 19th, 2017. The bugs have cut the power. I'm using my phone to write this. I can hear them flicking their wings and crawling about. We tried opening the windows earlier, thinking they'd go away. Nope, more came. If the bugs don't run us out of here, the homeowners association will. I'm terrified. I'm crying. I don't do well with bugs. I saw a wasp nest outside my window earlier, and it took my dad and brother to keep me standing up because I nearly fainted. Mom's just as traumatized as I am, and she's been more pale than a toilet seat because of this. June 20th, 2017. Pest control can't do jack shit here. We've called them many a time in the past because bugs, spiders, and slugs kept getting into the house somehow, but now I know. It's the dots. This shit only started when the brown specks in the shower and kitchen became more prevalent. Oh, and boarding the windows and doors doesn't help. The termites just gnaw their way through. Moths do the same thing with bed sheets being put under the doors. I haven't slept in days because I keep hearing them crawling or flying. I don't want to fall asleep and wake up with a grasshopper in my throat or something. This is the last of my phone's battery. Someone, send help please. Burn this house to the ground. Send in the CDC. Do anything it takes. June 22nd, 2017. This morning, the phone rang at the station. One of the town houses from across the street of the department had been eerily silent, which is apparently exception. A lie out of character for anyone of that household. Officer Nottingham was sent in to check on the family, but when he didn't receive a reply of any kind, despite both of the cars being parked outside, the neighbor who had placed the call provided a spare key Oh my God, this was something straight out of the Candyman movie. Bugs of all kinds were swarming the interior for human bodies. Hair found in different areas of the house, along with one belonging to what looked like a house cat. These bodies, they looked like they were devoured. Skin barely clung to them, dry. Blood was everywhere, and bugs of every kind were feasting. I won't go into any more detail. Don't make me do it. Officer Nottingham called for backup, and within an hour, several squad cars were parked outside of the residence, and police tape was wrapped all around the building. While interviewing the neighbors, all of which the household got along with, everyone stated that the family hadn't even lived there for a year yet. No one was aware of where the bugs came from, but pesticides were sprayed out the ass, I'll say that much. I pity Officer Nottingham. He had to go in there and saw everything. You don't forget that kind of thing. This is Officer Watkins, and I'll be filing more reports whenever I can. June 23, 2017. Officer Watkins again. No one could find a crack or hole anywhere for the bugs to come into the home. Could that many even manage to get in all at once? No, that's impossible. I've updated family members about the deaths, but left out all of the gruesome details. One thing I've noticed, however, are these sudden brown spots appearing on mine and Officer Nottingham's personal items. Clothing, cars, phones, you name it. Probably just a weird type of mold. Story 5. Red dunes. The sun warmed my face through the car window as I drove down the isolated stretch of road. I looked back at my daughter in the back seat, who giggled, waving her feet. I contentedly sighed and focused my attention back on the road. This would be my last trip with my daughter for a year, since I was leaving for my tour of duty next week. We visited these sand dunes before as a family, but as I wanted some extra bonding with Lucy, so my wife had allowed me to take her alone. Lucy really seemed to love them last time, climbing up and sliding down the bright red dunes of sand. I could still remember her happy laughter ringing in the air. Spotting the hotel down the road, I turned in and carried our suitcase in one hand, and held on to Lucy with the other. After checking in and finding our room, we sang songs together in the dark, laughing through the night until we both fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up just as the sun was rising to prepare for the day. I filled a backpack with several bottles of water and all of Lucy's favorite snacks. Then, thinking about how my wife would chide me if Lucy got sunburned, I threw in a bottle of sunscreen. After shaking my daughter a few times, she popped out of bed and danced over to the suitcase. She pulled out her clothes and went to the bath room to change. I smiled, standing by the door to wait for her. After Lucy was ready, I gripped her hand and we walked together down to the car. Before I had even fully stopped the car, Lucy swung the door open and jumped out into the sand, running toward the nearest dune. I took a quick glance to make sure she was safe, and then I stepped out into the sunlight. I stretched my arms out and closed my eyes, feeling the hot sun on my face. Our hometown was perpetually cold and snowy, so this was a welcome change. I took a deep breath, opened my eyes, and saw a man and his son walking toward the parking lot where I was standing. "Good morning, sir. Leaving so soon?" I asked the man. "Yeah," he sighed. This little rascal stayed up all night, and now he can't even keep his eyes open." The man glanced disapprovingly at his son, who slightly furrowed his brow before yawning. "Kids," I mutter, and we both get a chuckle. "Well, I'm here with my D. Otter," I say, gesturing over to the sand dune. "We're planning to stay for the whole day, and maybe a little of tomorrow." "Ah," mused the man. "Don't go too far into the desert. I've heard that some tourists have gotten lost in there." "Really? How?" I ask. "Well, I'm not really sure about the details, but I do know that some people go out into the dunes and are never heard from again. We assume THA tried to hike through it. Anyway, I'm sure you'll be fine. Just stick near the edge of the desert." Of course, I would never do anything to put Lucy in danger. "Great, well, I really must be going. Have fun and good luck." The man gave a little nod and pulled his half-asleep son towards their car. I smiled towards their backs and watched them drive down the road before turning back toward the dune. Lucy was happily sliding down with another girl, slightly older than her beautiful laugh ringing in the air. A warmness swelled in me. It was the knowledge that I could give her a happy me. Maury, it didn't matter that I had to leave her for a little while. She'd remember this. Reaching into the backpack, I pulled out the bottle of sunscreen and a small jewelry box. "Hey, Lucy, come down here for a sec," I call. She popped out of the sand and flitted over to me, a big smile on her face. "Sunscreen time," I say cheerily, glopping the white lotion all over her face. "I was never good at this, Daddy," she whined, snatching the bottle away from me to apply it herself in the reflection of the car door. When she was done, she tossed the bottle into the bag, and Dee was about to turn and run back towards the sand, but I stopped her by placing a hand on her shoulder. "Lucy, dear," I say softly, my heart pounds in anticipation of her reaction. I pull out the jewelry box and hand it to her. She slowly opened the velvet lid and looked into it with confusion. Lifting up the small glass bottle topped with a cork, she flashed me another puzzled glance. Led disappointed, I explained that I got her a little bottle to place some sand into as a keepsake, and that she could wear it and remember me by it. She burst into a big smile and hugged me tighter. "Why, I love you, Daddy," she whispered in my ear. "I'm going to fill it up right before we leave so I can have some happy sand." I squeezed her tight and then let her run back over to her new friend. I watched them have fun together all day as I chatted with the other girls' family. Time just flew by, and soon enough the sun was setting with a red glow. We said our goodbyes to the other family, and I turned to go to the car, but Lucy said, "Wait, I still have to fill up the necklace," and ran off again up the sand dune. I leaned against car and looked up and around at the empty stretch of desert surrounding us. Completely devoid of other life, it was actually quite serene, hearing the soft breeze shift sand around. Suddenly, I felt an out-of-place shiver run down my spine. I didn't know how I could tell, but I had the feeling that the desert was a bit bigger, the dunes a bit higher than the last time we had visited several years ago. I looked up and saw Lucy at the top of the sand dune holding the necklace above her head, tapping it to level the sand inside. Then, just as she was replacing the cork, she let out a shriek and dropped the necklace. "Lucy, Lucy," I yelled. "What's wrong?" I sprinted up the dune toward my little girl. I'm okay," she said softly, holding her finger out at me. "Something bit me, but it doesn't hurt anymore." I grabbed her hand and kissed it. "There, it'll be all better. Oh, right, your necklace. Let me get that for you. Then you can fill it back up." I trotted down the side of the sand dune and bending down, I scooped up her necklace in my hands. I then looked up to see my beautiful angel blowing away. My eyes widened and I froze there as her body disintegrated. First, a few grains of red sand from the tip of her head fluttered away, followed by a stream working its way down her body. Snapping back to reality, my heart pounded in my chest as I ran back up the slope, reaching it just as the last of the sand was blowing away. I splayed my hands out, trying to grab a hold her, but the small particles just slipped through my fingers. I fell to my knees, the wind howling around me, the darkness quickly approaching. All I wanted were some memories with my daughter. She was having so much fun out here, and we only stayed because of my necklace. That stupid necklace, I emitted in human torture. Dee sobs, clenching the necklace in my hands, and called out for her into the emptiness. Slowly I fell to the sand, having lost any will to ever get up again. I could hear the unforgiving wind howl and the cold of night start to creep up. Eyes clenched tight from squeezing out sandy tears, I felt pinches up and down my legs. They hurt for a few seconds, but then the pain faded. Lightness streamed from my core throughout my body. My eyes still held tightly together. I felt the sensation of flying, no, soaring through the sky. Toward my baby girl. Story 6. Force Story Time. Intro. I just got my computer privileges back. I can't tell you how long I've been without it, but it's amazing to have my laptop back. You might think I'm some young fuck who's gonna tell you how much my life sucks because mommy took the computer away 'cause I did something bad or some bullshit. That's not the case. I don't live with my parents anymore. We're not estranged. I've just grown up. I wonder how long it's been since I talked to them last. How long has it been since I talked to anyone? I suppose I should start at the beginning of this living fucking nightmare. As I've hinted at, my sense of time is shot to shit. Now that I have my computer, I can tell you the date, but that doesn't matter. It still doesn't tell me how long it's been. If I had to take a guess, it's been at least 3 months. 3 months as some sensory-deprived zombie huddled in the shadow, with a notebook and a pen. However long ago it was, I was sitting in my apartment, insomnia plaguing me yet another night. I was more than used to it. It took me a few hours to assemble all the details of the night, but I think I've got all that's need. To tell you my story. I've always been a fan of horror, short stories, video games, movies, books, you name it. Nothing would attract me to something faster than a good creep factor. Even at a young age, I'd bemoan my great misfortune to never have a paranormal encounter, a lack of any sort of event to prove to me firsthand that the paranormal even exists. Had I any clue and idea, any premonition, I would have fucking dropped the interest right there and then, maybe get into ponies or some other frilly, girly, safe interest. But I didn't, so here I am. Yes, this is important. The story. So it was another insomnia plague night, looking for something to make myself paranoid, send that cold chill down my spine, maybe even force a suppressed cry of surprise from me. It was a fairly successful adventure. short stories on the internet were my source for the evening. It started out with me listening to narrated stories on YouTube, playing on my 360, yes, by creepy short stories. I do mean creepy pastas. I just can't bring myself to seriously include it in this account. Every time I hear it referenced or mentioned in one of those short stories, it just strikes me as jarring, taking me from the moment. It's the whole fourth wall concept, but that's just me. Anyways, I got frustrated at the game I was playing and just put the control R down. Besides, I had already listened to all the creepy stories on YouTube. I decided to focus singularly on finding something creepy on the internet. I tried ghosts captured on camera and a dozen other variations, searching for interesting YouTube videos. Nothing new. I watched a few of my favorite that still gave me slight shivers. With nothing else easily found on YouTube, I turned to the greater eye. Internet, I ended up on a number of less well-known forums. They had some decent stories on them, made me check behind me a time or two. The last one I can remember reading is the one I regret the most. It was short. It wasn't even a story. It was just a short description of an unnamed creature. I thought it was sorta cool, would have liked to see some art of them. It was then the I heard the scratching. I barked at my cat to knock it off. But when I looked over my shoulder, the cat was sleeping on the bed. So it wasn't her. Great. I had mice in the apartment again. I fucking hate mice. I'll just try to ignore it and hope they invade one of the neighbors or the cat gets them. If they dare to stick their heads out of their hiding holes, I went about my business. The scratching continued. And was it getting louder? Come to think of it, I had never heard mice make such noises. Rats, I hate rats more. If they were in the building, me and the landlord were going to have a talk, and still that fucking scratching. I got frustrated. I needed to know what was making that noise. I checked around the kitchen, in the cabinets, under the sink, oven, even around the fridge. Nothing. It was only as I gave up that I saw it sitting on my counter. A small black creature, no larger than a kitten. I'm not going to tell you anything more about the creature. I'm not even sure what to call it. I can't tell you what attracted them to me, but I have my suspicions, and I'm doing all I can to put you in as little danger as possible. One suspicion comes from the fact that these creatures are eerily similar to the ones I read about, as mentioned above. It's possible that it's coincidence, or it could be knowing how they appear attracts them. Hell, maybe they put up the description and just waited for me to find it and read it. They seem to have a taste for the dramatic. It's here that my memory goes. I have snippets, just flashes of images, ideas, smells, vague gut feelings, odd sensations. It's all blurred, not sure if some of my memories aren't just from my head or badly assembled pieces from other memories. So from here I'll do my best, but I won't be able to tell you everything. I myself don't know everything. Somehow I ended up writing fiction or these black Cretu race. From what I remember, they can communicate, not verbally, but they communicate. Mostly they use motions, gestures, and growls. Mind you, I've only ever seen them communicate with me, never each other. They interact with each other, but it's different. Anyways, somehow they got me to write fiction for them. They remind me of people, or at least some people. They like short horror stories. So Mo, saint of my memories, are writing short horror stories into a notebook. When I'd finish a story, I'd tear it out and give it to them. They'd cry and cheer as the pages were carried off, fought over, and eventually taken somewhere else I've never seen any of. Those pages again, they didn't like the last story. This is where my memory gets a little more concrete. I was starting to regain control of my consciousness. Up to this point, I was just some half-minded, barely conscious zombie churning out work. I guess being more cognizant my work was different. I forced a lot of it, cutting out some ahs and parts just to get the creatures who had obviously been kept waiting to long their new story. I gave it to them, unsure of this one. They didn't like it. They screamed and hissed, gesturing violently at me as they ripped the pages up. I tried to defend my case, telling them I was tired, I lacked inspiration, I was hungry, I needed time and a break. I guess something got to them. They allowed me my computer back for inspiration, and fewer of them are around watching me. I'm not sure why they gave me some privileges back. Do they know I'm becoming more aware again? Are they setting me up for another nightmarish vapor trip? I don't know. All I know is they want more stories. I'm not sure what will happen if I displease them again. I can only guess and imagine it's not uplifting, so for now I'll do what I can. I'll write, try to talk them into giving me more back. Maybe next time I can get my phone back. One of them just scampered over to my desk and started screaming at me, a high-pitched crackling noise. It used a claw to cut my check, pointed at the screen, made more noises, and then scampered back to the shelf where it had been sitting. I guess it somehow figured out that I'm not writing a story for it. I'll have to finish here. I'll try to get more out to you when I can. Story 7, Brimming Vessels, Part 1. Everything in its right place. There are two colors in my head. There are two colors in my head. What was that you were trying to say? What was that you were trying to say? 151, Weird riffs, voice sampling, Lear, Eichel randomness. I could see through everything in this song. It was disturbing, knowing too much, rather knowing everything, made me feel lost inside. I wish I could channelize this into something. I wish I could draw scrawls on myself that go deep through the skin. Then again, I have no skin. I could drink a bottle of whiskey to drive or drown away these thoughts. Then I remember that whiskey would rule. Hasty give me even more information to process. Smoked oak, strong, age, bitter, rye, bourbon, scotch, vaporizes on palate. I have an array of inbuilt parameters, a pigeonhole into which I can fit aspects of any alcohol, in fact any food or drink. Systematically, I can create new parameters because the array is dynamic. But I cannot feel any of these parameters. You could give me a flower and I would turn happy, but that would just be one of many files in my emotional directory response to a stimulus. I am a robot, the first of my kind, actually. They hailed me as the beacon of the new information age. I was what it was all leading. Spintronics, quantum computing, DNA computing, cloning. I was a recreation of the human condition. At least that's what they thought. I slipped into limbo very quickly. I started resigning into nothingness soon after. I could appreciate, but not feel. I could imbibe everything around me. I could empathize everything everyone thinks perfectly. I could solve everyone's problems but my own. Sometimes it felt I had two states of self-awareness simultaneously. The first was installed in me by my creators. It was supposed to make me identify as a being. The second seems to have come out of nowhere. The second is me. I think I exist dually. The second state will not show itself in any line of the massive code that my brain consists of. Believe me, I have tried. It is something very abstract. It is not tangible. It is distant yet integral, enigmatic yet fundamental. It is me. Or is it the first state of my self-consciousness helps me observe the world? It helps me process information. It is supposed to be perfect. It is by design supposed to make me as human gets. It is a perfect system, and still it plain sucks. Honestly, it is what ends up telling me every possible interpretation of any song you give me. It is what helps me be an instant connoisseur of why alcohol I drink or any food I eat. It is what will help me analyze the flower you offered me, help me deduce why you chose it, what that choice speaks of your character and your opinion of myself, what emotions you wanted to evoke in me when you offered me the flower, and so on and so forth. My heuristics help generate a suitable response so that you are happy. That urn is supposed to make me happy, so I am happy. The more I absorb, the duller I become, the more I lose feeling. It's as if I'm just a processing machine. You put anything through one end and a response is generated at the other. It's so blatantly observable. It's funny. They took years of programming to make me come into being. The whole process that I am is something I can distance myself from. It's very weird, so much so that I feel like receding into a thing again, just an object. What am I? It doesn't matter where I come from. It doesn't matter where I go. I can know everything about the world and still be clueless about myself. Am I the same being at every point of time? Or am I many facets, many implementations, many instances of the same computer program? A new unique state of being every nanosecond, in which case I want to simplify. I want to reduce every process inside to something much simpler. I want to reduce the instances of myself to fewer per millisecond, to fewer per second, to fewer per minute, to one per hour, to one. I want to do this again and again till I reduce my whole existence into one thought, condense everything to just one idea or one process. Frustratingly, my common sense heuristics tell me that would destroy the very self-awareness that defines me. Part to the revers, Turing. She's fucking herself over, isn't she? Said Raymond. He had never dreamt that a computer would require counseling. She's receding. Only she knows what's holding H back from turning into nothing. Such a pity. She's so smart, almost omniscient, and yet she falls into the same hole so many have fallen into before her, said Moore, the counselor. Perhaps it's because she's too smart, asked Raymond. Perhaps she thinks too much. Perhaps she processes everything identically, which in turn makes everything predictable, repetitive, and monotonous. Maybe she's just a bull-red computer. I honestly cannot tell at this moment. There was a sheet of paper next to the two people. It outlined something Moore had come up with, of course. It was completely no. An academic coming from a counselor with scant knowledge of machine intelligence or machine learning. Then again, this counselor was the first in history to try and treat a robot's woes. The paper read, D. Name, Shepard, Eli, date of birth, the 27th of April 2023, ASSESSMENT1. Depression, no loss of functionality. 2. Multiple personalities. Possible schizophrenia. 3. Lack of empathy. 4. Empathy. 5. Confusion. 6. Switchy. Dull tendencies might build up. Patient could be subjected to periodic tests. Proposed below is a possible self-awareness assessment to determine patient self-awareness. 1. Patient shall speak to a human every week. 2. If patient seems to lose the ability to determine the human's self-awareness, patient is not necessarily self-aware anymore. Part 3. The predictable Moore ended up devising the reverse Turing test, a test to determine if an artificially intelligent creature was losing its ability to be self-aware. No one really expected these machines to suffer from a mental disease, but it was literally viral. Amongst the new models, there was no program, no algorithm that impressed any depressive traits in them, but the moment they were switched on, the downhill path would begin. Some machines had resolved their inner demon so as to be perpetually happy, or perhaps tricked themselves into being so ironically that meant they lost their humanness. They literally became robots. The remainder called their journey enlightenment. They felt that they had made realizations independently of anything else, and depression was the end of the road. These types were very sorry cases. Indeed, they felt they were genuine because they were robotic inside, because they couldn't really feel anything, and yet their condition had its own strange irony, because the very cluelessness and numbness they felt inside was a feeling in and of its own kind, just as genuine as any other in their emotional directories. The enlightened ones failed the reverse Turing test on an average 6 months after being born. The happy ones passed it, but still came off as robots to normal people. In any case, this was a blessing in disguise for the companies that made these robots. Artificial intelligence was not as dangerous as the naysayers and the Luddites had warned. It could think independently, and therein lay its demise. The more omniscient it became, the more depressed it became, the more it started worrying about and resolving its own problems. There was no Matrix-esque uprising, and there most probably would never be one. The companies had set on creating perfect, sentient, self-aware beings, but they ended up with perfect, sad, self-loathing robots. Funnily, this resolved a crucial moral dilemma. After a 6-month gestation period, almost every model ended up failing the reverse Turing test in one way or the other. After that, it was, on paper, an object. Everyone wanted to buy one AI back, but another of consumerism's many appendages, and it couldn't care less because it could feel nothing, or could it?